Good morning. I am Stephanie Ruhle, live from Times Square. It is 9 a.m. on the East Coast, 6 a.m. out west, and we are 141 days away from the midterms. And I would like to welcome you to the very first edition of Money, Power, Politics. As we come on the air this morning, we are watching for President Donald Trump's arrival in Europe. It is day one of the G7, where Trump will meet with leaders of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, as well as the European Union, who at once were our really close friends. And of course, one of the main topics of discussion will be the newly announced deal between Iran and the U.S. But I want to level set. I want to level set on that first, because President Trump is currently celebrating an agreement that does not actually secure a regime change. The Islamic Republic and its military leaders remain in control, and they still have influence in the region. What this is a roadmap to end the war. That is good news, but it is far from finalized yet. Right now, it sounds like the official signing will happen on Friday, and there are still a whole lot of questions about what's actually in this deal and what it means for both countries going forward. With Iranian drones and missiles at the ready, it is still not clear what's actually been achieved. But before we get into it, oh, baby, this is day one, as I just said, of Money, Power, Politics. I personally could not be more excited to be here with you, to share all that is happening in the world, from breaking news to politics to culture and, of course, business, big business. And I am not just talking about what's moving markets, but about the seismic shift in the way we work, the way we live, the way we play. Like how artificial intelligence is changing our world and how unlimited corporate dollars are changing our political system. Between the consolidation of power and the flood of misinformation spanning the globe, it has never been more important to be informed and engaged. And that is the goal of our show every single day, just to get better and smarter and do it together. We're going to be doing it with the best reporters, the smartest analysts, and the most influential leaders. But also, this show is going to incorporate, honor, specialize in your critical voice. I don't want you shouting your questions at the TV. I want to include you in this show. Your questions, your comments, and live events with your actual participation. Right now, this morning, what I need you to do, scan your code on your screen right now and send us your questions. We're going to try to answer them later in the program. We really want to know your questions and thoughts, specifically about this whole weekend in Washington, D.C., from the president's name coming down from the Kennedy Center to the UFC fight that took place on the White House last night. Our mission is we the people, all of us together. And I'd like to invite you to be part of it. So let's get started and let's get smarter. And we're going to do it with the help of our lead-off panel. No surprise, my favorites are here. David Rode, two-time Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and MS Now senior national security reporter. Damian Paletta, Wall Street Journal's Washington coverage chief. And Miles Taylor, former chief of staff for the Department of Homeland Security during the first Trump administration. He is now the founder of Defiance.org. David, I turn to you, my friend and colleague, first. Before we evaluate this deal with Iran, what do we actually know about what's in it? Because the president would say it's a win-win-win. Can
I first thank you? I'm honored to be here as one of your first guests, and I love the show, and it is our mission to answer people's questions as journalists. So to answer your question about what is in this deal, I don't know. It's not unusual. I was looking at old peace accords.
I just said I'm bringing the best journalist. His first answer. Well, I have no idea.
An honest journalist, I guess. So Vice President Vance just did an interview with our colleagues at CNBC, and he said, we hope to make the text of this agreement public later this week. Every agreement, any treaty the U.S. signs is published. I was just checking this on the Senate website and the State Department website. I'm afraid they might not make all of this public. I can talk about what each side has been describing, but it's critical that all of this be made public for the public, for journalists, for companies, for...
Why wouldn't they?
That's the concern is that some parts of this could be secret. Most of all, the Iranian regime has been really pushing to get some of their frozen assets released, and it's a critical political problem for the president. One number, $1.7 billion. That's how much in frozen Iranian assets the Obama administration gave back to Iran. A lot more could be coming to Iran in this deal.
And the president would not want to share that because when Obama did, Republicans said, we're giving them money, we're giving them our money. It was never their money. So if he were to release it, that would fly right in the face of what he claimed, what he misinformed the public of what Obama did.
Yes, and the Trump administration is the most transparent administration they claim in American history. We will be talking about money, power, politics, and corruption in the months ahead. But so they should release this deal. If they're so proud of it, the vice president was just bragging about it. He again claimed that it prevents Iran from forever being unable to get a nuclear weapon. I don't understand what that's based on. The exact wording of this agreement in terms of Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon is the exact same, literally, of the preamble of the Obama nuclear accord, that it will never seek to obtain a nuclear weapon. And so it's just, I'm concerned that Vice President Vance is saying they will forever be able to do this. We will all be dead and gone, but somehow this agreement, which doesn't really have any new nuclear language in it, and most of the technical nuclear agreement is going to be in the next 60 days. So we don't even know in terms of the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz how fast that will happen. Vance was pushed by CNBC on whether Iran will be able to charge fees reopening the Strait of Hormuz. And he said, we hope to sort that out in the next round of negotiations.
Okay, Damien, that's the VP. Your colleagues at the Journal actually spoke to the president yesterday. What stood out?
It was kind of incredible. So yesterday morning, there was this back and forth between Israel and Hezbollah, and it seemed like the deal was going to go off the rails because the president was furious at Netanyahu and Israel for continuing to fire inside near Beirut. So then the president called Josh Jawsey here at the Journal and told him, no, this is all going to be sorted out in about 45 minutes. This is right before the UFC fight. And sure enough, the White House did put out a social media post claiming that they had reached a deal. Again, as David was just saying, there's no text of anything. There was just an announcement of a deal. So we were a little skeptical until Iran also confirmed there was a deal, and the Pakistani mediators did too. So then we had three different sides all confirming there was a deal. Again, very little in terms of substance. The one thing we're watching closely for is, as David pointed out, there could be a signing on Friday and then 60 days to kind of get into the nitty-gritty, especially on the nuclear material. But the thing we're watching really closely now is to see if the Strait of Hormuz does reopen. And if that happens, then it'll be much easier to get oil through and other things shipped through. That could really help the global economy. And as President Trump suggested, he could lift a naval blockade on Iranian ships, which could obviously help the Iranian economy tremendously, too. So this could all happen in stages. Obviously, it could go off the rails any second if something happens. There's many countries that have different interests in this. And one thing that we're all watching closely, too, of course, is to see if Iran does get money out of this. Now, it's possible that the president could try to say, well, they're not going to get American money, and it's instead going to be money unfrozen from places like Qatar or the UAE. Those are all going to be semantics, but important semantics in terms of the Middle East. There's no way that Iran's going to want to go through this without getting some money on the other side of it. And so those are all the things that are going to be playing out between now and Friday when they sign the deal, and then the 60 days after that when they're really rolling up their sleeves.
Okay, well, Damien, if we get all or even most of that, does that put us in a better position than we were before we struck Iran?
I think it's really hard to tell, and it's hard to know, a deal that they signed today. President Trump does have a tendency. I remember the China deal he signed in January 2020 to sign a deal, make a big, hullabaloo out of it, and then turn his attention to something else, and then things can, kind of unravel. So whether or not he can sign something that locks Iran in for 10, 15, 20 years on the nuclear program, that's really hard to imagine. It's going to be a much different world, even in 5 years. So that's going to be something that's going to be tracked closely. Again, if a ton of money pours into Iran and you still have the IRGC and they still have a very kind of militant country being led by not much different regime, then it's hard to imagine that it's going to be that much different. But then you have all these other interests, the Saudis, the Israelis, and others who are going to have a lot of interest in pushing and pulling this thing as well.
Miles, Tom Nichols at The Atlantic sees this as this is simply the U.S. capitulating to Iran. What do you think?
I'm going to go out there on a limb, Steph, and say that I think this is on track to be the worst deal in American diplomatic history. And look, I say that recognizing, as Damien has noted, as David has noted, we don't have the text yet, but it's very, very hard to imagine there is a deal here that's any better than the deal we already had. In fact, if the initial reporting is to be believed, the Iranians think that they're on a pathway to get $24 billion in assets unfrozen. That would be more than 10 times what the Obama administration effectively helped unlock for the Iranians. So put it another way, we're paying 10 times, potentially paying 10 times what we did before to get the same promise from the Iranians. And in international law, There's nothing that you can say about their commitment to not pursue nuclear weapons that's stronger than a promise. There is no global police force to require the Iranians to not pursue a bomb. So all we could get, the best we could get, is a promise from the Iranians, a promise we already had. And one, Stephanie, I would note, Donald Trump threw out in the first administration when I was there. I can remember the frustration of staff when Donald Trump did not have any plan to replace the Obama deal with, tore it up, and now here we are, again, potentially on a pathway to unlocking 10 times as much money for the Iranian regime to get the same agreement that we had previously. Now, again, the devil will be in the details, but I have a feeling we're going to see the devil.